Before we begin, I need to make a quick announcement before we begin the real video that I already made. Last night, the trademark Warlords of Draenor has been announced, and it's again speculated that this is the name for the next WoW expansion. Although it's very possible that this is a name for the next expansion, it's not certain until they've actually announced it at BlizzCon. Some of you already asked me about my opinion on this, and I've done pretty much all the speculation that I can. Just from the title, we can tell that it has to do with Outland, because Outland used to be called Draenor before it got destroyed. Warlord sounds like War Chief, and that would hint toward a possible time travel expansion. One that I speculated about in my time travel video. Now I could sit here and speculate for 50 minutes about Burning Legion, about War Chiefs that we know from the past. I could make a long story from it, but it's just one more week until BlizzCon. I'll place some links with some speculation in the description, and let's just wait a couple more days and we can talk about the real 100% confirmed next expansion. Now then, on with the video. Hello everyone! 1 week to go until BlizzCon, and I wanted to let you all know my battle plan for that week. BlizzCon is going to be next week on Friday and Saturday, and to answer some questions that I already received, I can't record the stream because that will most likely get me in a lot of copyright problems, which I simply don't want. I can't watch the stream on Twitch with you guys because I want to immediately make a video once they announce something big. So whenever I hear that the next expansion is going to be Naga in space, I want to be able to voice over that, render it, upload it, boom. You guys know it as well. I'll probably won't be the first with the news, but that's okay. I'll have to stay up late because of the beautiful time difference, which means long hours with little sleep. So after the weekend I'll probably be very broken since I'm not the youngest anymore. I'm going to do my very best to get the lore video out on Monday, and I mean of course a lore video about a new expansion, but it is possible that it might run a little bit later than usual. So just so you know, it might not be on Monday, but I'll do my best to get it done. To spice things up, the great people over at finalboss.tv are going to send me some material from BlizzCon itself. Bay is able to go to BlizzCon, so he's going to get some pictures hopefully, maybe a couple of shots from the floor itself, something that I can use in the lore video to make it a little bit more clear of what's going on, and of course better looking. For those unaware, Final Boss TV is a podcast that talks about WoW, and specifically they call themselves the Endgame Raiding Show, so they talk about classes, they talk about raiding, all kinds of things about World of Warcraft, and I enjoy the podcast a lot. If you want more info, I've placed a link in the description so you can see what they're doing over there. And yeah, like I said, hopefully that will upgrade the video a little bit and will make things look beautiful. Once that weekend is over and I said the things that I want to let you all know, then we'll resume to the normal schedule and everything should be back in order. We also have of course Christmas and my birthday's coming up and all kinds of real life events that will take place. But if anything changes by that time, I'll be sure to let you guys know. Now then, with that announcement out of the way, this week I want to talk about the WoW novels. I've been getting a lot of questions from people who also want to read the WoW novels, but they don't know where to start, or they're looking for my recommendations. I've placed a link in the description which will take you to a great post on the forums, and it shows you a possible reading order that you can follow. Now most books, they stand on their own and they can be read as an individual book, but others do rely on previous novels. I love it that so many people want to start reading, so I want to take this Q&A and tell you my experience with the novels that I've read. Note that I say my experience, your experience with the books can be completely different. In the end, it's all about taste. You could start with the War of the Ancients trilogy. This story takes place 10,000 years ago, just before the Sundering, and is the oldest novel you can find. Besides Dawn of the Aspects, but that officially takes place in our time. It tells the tale of Croesus, Ronan and Broxigar, who are sent back in time and need to save the world from the Burning Legion and Sargeras. The story is covered in 3 books, so you get your money's worth, and it stands pretty much on its own. It has a little bit of history between Croesus and Ronan, but that's only at the start. After that you read about Malfurion, Tyrande, Illidan, Azshara, other major characters, and the story doesn't depend on any previous history. I thought the story and the book was great, but you do want to keep your previous knowledge of Warcraft out of it. Imagine that this is an alternative timeline. Just read the story on its own, don't think about the time travel complications, and you will enjoy it so much more. It's written by Neck, so the females, especially Tyrande, are portrayed as being very weak, which is just, yeah, it's just Neck his style. Other than that, a great story with a lot of fighting, a lot of epic characters like Brochigar, a lot of epic storytelling. It explains why Azeroth looks the way it is, why we fight the Legion, the Naga. It has dragons and Deathwing, and that's all kinds of good stuff, and it's definitely worth your time to start with this book. Just worth your money, simple as that. If you don't really care about the early history of Azeroth, you could go a little bit closer to the current story, starting with Rise of the Horde. This story tells about the history of the Orcs and the Draenei, how the Orcs got corrupted, how and why they formed the first Horde and invaded Azeroth. This one is one of my favorite books because it gives so much more insight as to how the first war between the Alliance and the Horde started. It shows that some will do anything for power, while others keep a cool head and try to do what is best for their people. It shows how the Orcs lost their honor and were eventually forced to turn into the murderous, rampaging horde that we saw in Warcraft. The story ends just before the horde enters the Dark Portal and starts their invasion. After Rise of the Horde comes The Last Guardian, which takes place sometime after the Horde stepped through the portal and started to invade Azeroth. It tells about the Guardian Medivh, who most of you probably know as the Prophet from Warcraft 3. It tells about Khadgar, Enduin Lothar, Garona Half-Orcan, and even a little bit about Sargeras. It's the mystery around Medivh that pulls you into the story and you just want to know more about his powers, his history. You just want to know more about Medivh, and that's what makes it interesting. Sadly, they continued Medivh's story with his son Medan in the comics, so it's unlikely that he will get a new story, but I still have a little bit of hope that one day we might see a new story for Medivh. Hopefully. Anyways, after The Last Guardian comes Tides of Darkness, which tells about the next step in the war, the formation of the First Alliance, and the Alliance making a stand and turning the war around. I don't want to give too much away because that would spoil it, but it's part of the grand storyline. It tells about the Horde trying to regain its honor that it lost on Draenor, and the First Alliance formed between Dwarf, High Elves and the humans. Yeah, it's pretty much the basic story that we've been playing for all these years where World of Warcraft is based on. The conclusion of the storyline and the war itself comes with Beyond the Dark Portal, where another Horde invasion has to be repelled by the Alliance in order to not only save Azeroth, but also other worlds so that they will never feel the pain that Azeroth had to endure from the first Horde. It's a good story, nice ending, and it flowed well into the next Warcraft games. Lord of the Clans is my all-time favorite novel to this day. It tells the story of Thrall, how he started out as a slave to the humans, his journey to becoming the first new shaman of his people, ever since they got corrupted, to him eventually reforming the Horde. This book is essential if you want to understand the old hatred from the Alliance to the new mindset of Thrall his Horde, because it did not have the same mindset as the old Horde had. It's an amazing story. I had no idea what the history of Thrall was, what he actually went through, and I had no idea that a book could make you go, what the fuck? No way that just happened. It's brilliant. Get this book, it's worth your time. Day of the Dragon takes place after the war and it tells the story of Ronan who gets used by Kresis to save Queen Alexstrasza. She's been enslaved by the orcs and they're forcing her to make lots of baby dragons in Grim Batol. It's a decent story, pretty good. Takes a little bit to become interesting, but after that it's just a good story. It also contains the aspects, which is of course always amazing, the Demon Soul and a bunch of other important things. Not the best story, but still pretty good. Arthas, Rise of the Lich King tells the story of Arthas and his road to become the Lich King. Shockingly. It's heavily based on the story that we know from Warcraft 3, but there are certain details that they just can't show in a game. The story is told from 3 perspectives, one from Arthas, from Jaina and from Sylvanas. And each of them show you what they were thinking, how they experienced Arthas and his road to damnation. It's a must-read story for anyone who liked Arthas back in Warcraft 3 and wants to know all the dirty details. Cycle of Hatred. I only recently finished reading this novel and it takes place just after Warcraft 3. Jaina and Thrall have made their pact of not trying to kill each other, but old hatreds die hard. There will always be people who want to keep fighting on both sides, and for those who wonder why do we still fight each other in Warcraft, well, this book should give you a pretty good idea as to why. It also tells a little bit about Aegwynn, her history, and Aegwynn is the mother of Medivh, which was really interesting to find out. Night of the Dragon is the follow-up of Day of the Dragon, so it's best to read that one before you read this one. I had a lot of trouble getting through it because it picks up about halfway into the book, but that first half just took so long to get through. The story takes place after the Burning Crusade and I do have to admit it was worth it to bite through the first half, because the second half, the conclusion, although predictable, was a very nice one. And for those who really like dragon lore or Ronin or the Demon Soul, this should be right up your alley. I can't explain much about the story without spoiling it. Let's just say that the Demon Soul isn't easily vanquished and that the Black Dragon Flight is out of their mind. That's all I'm going to say about it. Storm Rage takes place just before the Cataclysm, and it deals with the Emerald Dream, also known as the Emerald Nightmare. You can read the book on its own, but to appreciate it more, I would recommend first reading the War of the Ancients trilogy, since a lot of that story from that trilogy comes back in this story. I really enjoyed it because it tells about dream situations, things that would never really happen in World of Warcraft, which was just awesome. And it was explained in a very creepy way. It also has some epic battles in it. Druid powers in the novels is explained in amazing ways. And it explains how Malfurion returned as leader of the Night Elves and how Staghelm lost that position. It also has a little bit of Fura, the niece of Broxigar, his ex that he used in the War of the Ancients trilogy. It has a little bit of Tyrande, who isn't a full damsel in distress this time. She is a little bit. She sometimes gets overwhelmed, but for his standards, she pretty much holds her own in battle, which is awesome. So yeah, I thought it was a good story. The Shattering, a prelude to Cataclysm. As you might have guessed from the title, this book explains the events that took place just before the Cataclysm. It tells about Thrall and Agra, how Thrall resigned as war chief, placed Garrosh in that position, and started his journey to embrace his shamanistic side and save the world. It tells about Garrosh, how he dealt with his new position, how others looked at him, and how the battle with Cairn began, how Bane reacted to it all that entire storyline that they never truly explained in the game. That's inside this book. It also tells about Moira, how the Dark Iron Dwarfs joined the Alliance, and how the Council of Three Hammers was formed. The game just doesn't have enough room to explain all this, and the book fills in the gaps of what actually happened with the Cataclysm. I enjoyed it, especially because I read it after the Cataclysm, and it gave a lot of aha moments, which was just awesome. Like Magni Bronzebeard. Why was he in the crystal? Oh, that's inside this book. Ah, now I understand. You know, those kinds of moments. Wolfheart is one of the two novels that I really can't recommend. This book tells about how Varian tries to find balance between his king side and his Lo'Gosh side. For those that don't know, once upon a time Onyxia split Varian in two. But in the end she also fixed him again and made him whole. This reformation between politician Varian and gladiator Varian didn't go so smoothly, and he's been struggling with this ever since. Besides that, it also tells about how the Worgen got into the Alliance, how Varian became the High King, and near the end there's a little bit of fighting with Maiev and Garrosh. Overall, it's not a bad story, but the first 3/4 of the book is all about politics and building up, and it's so slow that at the end it feels like poof, overdone, end of the story. The moment that you're building upon, that you're waiting for, is just over in an instant. And that made the rest of the book seem very boring. Not my favorites, but as I said at the start, this is all my taste and my experience. Thrall, Twilight of the Aspects, tells more about Thrall's journey as he teams up with the Aspects to kick Deathwing his butt. It has a little bit of time travel, a little bit of Medivh in it, the Aspects, and overall it's a great addition to the story of the Cataclysm. It's not great, but it's also definitely not bad. I would just call it a good book. Yeah, that's what I would call it. Jaina Proudmoore, Tides of War. This book is a must read if you don't understand why Jaina wants to keep fighting the Horde. They tried to tell this story with the bombing of Faramore scenario, but that was done in a very poor way. The scenario doesn't even come close to the impact of the story and all the events that happened. If you're into the story of Pandaria and you really want to understand what exactly happened at the start, read this book and it will take you on a roller coaster of emotions. I can guarantee it. They took Jaina, they took peaceful Jaina and turned her into a badass who wants revenge. I loved it. Dawn of the Aspects. This story takes place after the events of Tides of War, but it takes you back into the past. Way into the past, in a time period where the Aspects were not yet Aspects. I had high hopes for this book, because the story tells about the things that are most interesting to me. The Titans, the Aspects, just great subjects for any story, but it didn't deliver for me. The first thing that put me off is that the story is told from Kalec, his mindset. He gets sucked into the mind of Malygos, so the entire story is told with little lines like Malygos moved left, but Kalec saw something on the right and he wanted desperately to move to the right, but he couldn't because he was stuck in the mind of Malygos. Malygos was in a dire situation, but Kalec knew that he would survive. Or did he know? past, future, it was all melting together and Kalex started to forget where he came from. It was just so annoying to read and it took me out of the story every time they switched between the two minds, which happened way too often. It would have been better, if it was just explained at the start of the story, like Kalex is now in the mind of the Malagos. Fine, let's do this, let's hear the story. Another thing that disappointed me was the main reason why I was so interested, and that was the part where the aspects receive their powers. That part is not explained. Just as the Titans are about to grant them their powers, do the little speech, the entire story ends. Imagine reading through all of that to reach a certain point, and at that point it just doesn't deliver it. The last thing that was a problem is that it was a predictable story. You know that the aspects survived, so it's very hard to create a real situation where you feel that they're in danger. They're never in any real danger because we know what's going to happen with them. So yeah, I can't recommend it, but it's out there for those interested as to why the aspects got chosen to become the aspects in the first place. Vol'jin, Shadows of the Horde is the last one on the list, and thankfully we can end it on a high note because this book was amazing. It tells about the period of time between Vol'jin, his assassination, and the moment that he started the rebellion. It has a perfect balance between diplomatic or peaceful moments, where Vol'jin tries to find himself and there isn't much going on besides character development, and then there are the moments of kick-ass battles, strategy, and things that make you appreciate Vol'jin and the decision of making him the war chief. Great book. Worth your money. And that's the list of the novels that I've read and can give you my opinion on. There are more sources, of course. For example, there are the comics that you can read, but I haven't read all of them yet. There are short stories on the WoW website that you can read for free. And there's one more story that I need to read. Of Blood and Honor is a story written by Chris Metzen himself, and from what I know it tells about Tyrion Fordring protecting or not willing to kill Eitric, and he gets banished for that. So yeah, it should be very interesting to read, especially because it goes to the human-orc relations, but I just haven't ordered it yet, so I can't wait to find out. So there you go, that's my recommendation, that's my list. Now I have a video that whenever someone asks me in what order they could read the novels or what I would recommend, I can just link this video. Just one more week for BlizzCon, guys, and as I said, it's going to be a hectic week, but also a lot of fun. I can't wait to discuss the new expansion, speculate on possible stories, and hopefully somehow find a way into the beta. Fingers crossed. For now, thank you very much for watching, everyone. Have a great weekend, and until next time, guys. See ya!